Have you ever wanted your game to look like it's being played on one of those dot matrix signs that they put on roadsides to tell you that like there's a bridge out or something like that? I can't say I've ever met someone who's wanted to do that, but now that I've said it out loud, I'm sure someone's gonna give it a go. Anyway, hello all the crazy people out there. My name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons making games. Let's talk about LED effects as a shader image filter. So, I recently made a video on mosaic tile filter shader effects in GameMaker. This video is going to be I guess you could call it an unofficial part 2 to that, because I'm going to be starting with the mosaic tile pattern as a base, and I'm going to be turning an image into a, let's say, a grid of fairly large pixels, which we will then proceed to draw circles around so that it looks like each of the tiles in the mosaic pattern are, rather than a square, it'll make it look more like they are like an individual light bulb or an individual very large circular pixel or something like that. And man, I'm sure that now that I've said that out loud, someone's going to appear on the Discord in a few weeks and have like a finished game on Steam that has its entire like display looking like this. But anyway, this is going to be more or less what we're going to end up with by the end of the video. I am, as I said, going to use the mosaic pattern project as a starting point. So if you have not watched that last video, I would recommend going and watching that first, because it's very simple, and I did talk a little bit about how that basic effect works, and this video is going to be a continuation of that. Let me call that tutorial LED. Let me go and just git init this and add it to a GitHub repository. There we go. So as a starting point, I have the mosaic effect. We're going to be breaking the image up into rectangles of like discrete specific colors. They can be large or small depending on what your tile count setting is, how many tiles you want to have horizontally. And our task for now, we've got our work cut out for us, is going to be to draw circles around that. So this is kind of getting sort of close to the subject of like drawing shapes, drawing anti-alias shapes using shaders, sign distance fields, like equations for different geometric shapes and that sort of thing. I'll probably talk about how you would draw anti-alias shapes like really in depth another time, but for now we're just going to want to find the center of each tile, and we're going to say if the original texture coordinate, not the adjusted ones that we're using to sample the mosaic tile from, but if the original texture coordinate is within a certain radius of the center of the tile, then it's going to be, the regular color. Otherwise, we're just going to set its color to black. The center of each of these mosaic tiles is fairly easy to find, so I can call it mosaic center UV. That's going to be the UV coordinates of the like the upper left, which is where we're sampling from for the tiles, plus 1/2 of the tile size. So we can say plus this divided by 2.0. If division and shaders makes you uncomfortable, you can say tile size times 0.5. Next, we're going to want the float distance to center of the original input texture coordinate, and we can use the distance function between that original texture coordinate and the mosaic center UV to calculate that. And lastly, we're going to want the tile half size, which for now I'm going to say float tile half size. That can be equal to tile size.x divided by 2.0, or once again, multiplied by 0.5 if you don't like doing division and shaders. After this, it's simply a matter of comparing the fragment's distance to the center to the tile half size. So if the distance to the center of the tile is greater than tile half size, we can simply set gl_frag color to RGB to a vector 3 of all zeros, and that's going to zero out the color of all pixels that are farther away from the center of the tile than that value. Set it to black. If we run this, we should have something that looks approximately circular around each of the tiles. And indeed, all right, so if I make them really big, it'll be a little bit easier to see where the shortcoming of this is, and that we've got circles, or we've at least got ellipsoids, and once again, they are not of a 1-to-1 aspect ratio. So if you remember in the last video, when I simply said the tile size is 1 over the tile count, that led to some aspect ratio issues that were corrected using the basically the resolution, the aspect ratio of the image. We're going to do something similar for the distance check of the texture coordinates here. All right. So if you, for whatever reason, want like ellipsoid circles around your LED effect in your game, then you can just leave it like this. I'm not going to come after you or anything like that. It is admittedly a little bit less noticeable on a small if the tiles are small, like if you have a large tile count value. But assuming you don't want that, we're going to do a little bit of math to correct for that. So let me actually comment this out. Actually, I'll make a commit first. For ellipsoid circles around tiles. Then I'll comment this out. Instead of just taking the distance of the v_v text score to the mosaic centers, to the mosaic center UV, I'm going to say vec2 UV to center is going to be equal to v_v text coord minus the mosaic center UV. So this is going to be a vector which points away from the center towards whatever the current texture coordinate is, whatever the current UV is. I can take this, I can take the y coordinate and multiply it by resolution, multiply by equals resolution dot y divided by resolution dot x. This is going to be fulfilling the same purpose as this bit in the original mosaic shader, accounting for the aspect ratio. We are kind of doing it in reverse here. And now we can say float distance to center is going to be, instead of using a distance function to get the distance between two vectors, this UVs to center vec2 is just a direction. It's not a position in space or anything like that. So instead of doing a distance calculation, we could just say the length of this vector. We could say float tile half size is going to be tile size.x multiplied by 0.5 once again. And that should be all of the changes that we need to do to make this work with circles. So let's run the game now. Hopefully this is not going to, hopefully I didn't mistype anything and it looks perfectly fine. Okay, and you can see that the circles that we're drawing over each of the tiles are indeed circular and not stretched out horizontally. And now it looks like our game is covered in a grid of light bulbs. All right, that's cool. Again, if you want to make your game look like it's being played in a dot matrix or something like that, you could probably honestly combine this with a posterization shader like the one that I made a video on a few weeks ago, and do some really interesting things with both this this LED effect and like a color quantization effect. But anyway, there's one more thing that I might consider doing, and I didn't actually remember to prepare this ahead of time, but if you want these circles to be a little bit smaller, perhaps, so if you want the circles to not all perfectly touch the boundaries of the tiles that they're on, but if you want the circles to be a little bit smaller, you could take the distance to the center and, for example, multiply that by maybe 1.1 or so, and that is going to have the effect of shrinking the circle. And now, if I make it slightly larger, you can see that there's a little bit of black space in between each of the circles, in between each of the light bulbs, if you will. You may or may not find that to be a desirable effect. That feels like something that I could toss in another uniform for. Uniform float. I guess I call it tile padding. We could take the tile padding uniform, multiply that by the length here, by the distance. I could go into the GML side here, Let me just make a few changes. And we now have a tile padding value in GML that's being passed to the shader as a uniform. And now if I were to run the game, if I were to increase, okay, fine, I need to be a little bit more sensitive when I change that, because that's a small change to that value will have a fairly large effect. If I make the tile padding a little bit bigger, you can see that the circles are shrinking. That's definitely an effect there. Making the light bulb smaller. If I were to make it really big, then the circles are going to keep shrinking. It's probably not super helpful. But let's see what happens if I go in the other direction. If I go below 1, something interesting is going to happen, and that the circles are going to start to smush together. And you're going to have, instead of circles, like circular like lights or whatever you want the visual design to look like, you're going to have the tiles starting to merge together again, which in its own right could be a fairly interesting effect. If the tile pattern goes below about 0.71, or the square root of 2 divided by 2, then you're going to just have the circular edges disappear altogether, and you're just going to be left with the original mosaic effect. Possibly an interesting addition that you might or might not want to make to a shader, to an image filter like this. I'm just going to leave it in here. If you think that is not a useful addition, then you don't have to make use of it. Anyway, I'm going to end this off here. My name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games. If you want the code for this, look for the GitHub repository down in the description of this video. I like to post videos on the weird things that you can do in GameMaker. I like to talk about shader things like this. I like to talk about weird 3D stuff, so if any of that appeals to you, feel free to subscribe. I have a Patreon, so if you want to contribute to the channel, links to that can be found in all the usual places. And if you felt inclined to pledge, I definitely would appreciate it. You should all go check out the Steam page for Wizarducks, which is the game that I like to work on when I'm not doing YouTube stuff. A link to that can be found down in the video description as well. I hope you all found this useful, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Zenjamin, VitroV, Squarecrow, Manta Ray, GameMaker, Edward Holt, and DJ Gibbles for supporting these videos. If you want to contribute to the channel, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.